This is Tarantula Bites. You're ripping off its roof.
Do we have a permit for that?
Regarding cross-ventilation, I don't believe in cross. This is Tarantula Bites, the series where I answer bite-sized questions with sharp fangs and sharper humor. But the point is always that you actually learn something. Today I answer 3 questions from Reddit. Let's dig into it. The first user asks about the sex of their desert blonde tarantula. Aphonopelma chalcodes, for everyone who gets confused with trivial names over scientific names. Anyone? No matter. They provide us with 3 pictures. Two from the ventral side and 1 from above. When you zoom in, you can actually see that the tarantula has pretty eyelashes. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean automatically that's a female, pity. But there's at least 1 clear ventral picture that maybe could be used. I have a whole video regarding tarantula sexing if you're interested. Unfortunately for the user, with this lighting and picture quality, the answer is non-conclusive. For me personally, ventral sexing is just guesswork. But if I wanted to sex it, I would look at the epigastric furrow, and in females this part is typically more pronounced and slightly raised compared with male tarantulas. So if the epigastric furrow is really strongly pronounced, I would tend towards a female. But from the picture, this tarantula already actually looks like a decently sized juvenile. So check the inside of the mold the next time and you will be able to tell for sure. The second post is from a user that asks if this enclosure is suitable for a green bottle blue tarantula, Aphonopelma cyanopubescens. It seems like the user adopted it due to unforeseen circumstances. So thanks for taking care of it. In the text they describe that they bought a 8" by 8" by 12" or 20 by 20 by 30 centimeter glass enclosure with mesh lid. They also ask if they should replace the mesh lid with acrylic and if they should drill holes into the side of the glass for cross ventilation. Let's address each point separately. First, to cut it short, you can absolutely make it work with this type of enclosure. These enclosures are inexpensive and they look good, so no need to buy a branded enclosure. This is better for your wallet and means more crickets for a tarantula. The green bottle blue is still a terrestrial tarantula though, so you will want to limit its fall height. It is also known that it loves to build up his web castle up from the floor all the way to the top of the enclosure, and once this is established, they are master of the castle. And the issue with the fall height eliminates itself. But in my opinion, 3 points. First, you're going to need to provide it with enough substrate. So I would suggest like 6 to 8 centimeters of substrate that is compact. And the second point, you should build up an anchoring structure made of sticks without any sharp points, made of fork bark, decorative items like fake plants that the green bottle blue will use as a backbone, as a skeleton for their web castle. And third point, although you want to build an anchoring structure, you don't want to build it up too high. So you should leave some headspace, because you want to avoid that the tarantula anchors its web to the mesh lid. Otherwise, every time you take off the lid, you're going to rip off the roof of the web castle. If it webs up to the mesh lid anyway, there's not a lot you can do about it, but that's also part of owning a green bottle blue tarantula. Regarding cross ventilation, I don't believe in cross ventilation. Unless you have an external airflow, the total ventilation area matters much more for effective air exchange. Because in technical terms, without external airflow, air exchange from the enclosure to its surroundings is much more a diffusional process than it is a convective process. Furthermore, the GBP actually requires a pretty dry enclosure, so the chances of creating a steak-net or environment are relatively low anyway. You're good with top ventilation only. No need to drill the glass. Finally, the issue with the mesh lids. There are 2 types of mesh lids. The good ones and the bad ones. With the good ones, the mesh is permanently joined together, because it's probably made out of sheet metal and the mesh is just punched out with some tool and then painted or coated. The bad ones are woven, so you have individual strands of wire that overlap, and in this overlapping area there's a chance or a risk that your tarantula's tarsal hooks get trapped in there. So that's the bad type of mesh lid. I personally never used the bad ones. But if you have this type of mesh lid, I think it's a good idea to replace it with a piece of drilled acrylic glass or a piece of sheet metal with holes. And the last question for today, a user asks, what is my Michele doing? This is his house. You're ripping off its roof. The Michele should be asking you,
do we have a permit for that?
Anyway, what is actually happening there? It looks like that this tarantula is kept in a plastic box with non-compacted, very fluffy substrate and no place to hide. So no wonder it became friends with its emotional support stick. Okay, but how to fix this situation? First, plastic containers are absolutely okay as tarantula enclosures. But you need to make sure that you drill enough holes for good ventilation. And in this case, I haven't seen the lid of the enclosure, but at least on the side, the ventilation seems way too sparse. Second thing, Michele's like to dig their own burrows. So you need to provide it with enough compacted substrate. And yes, it needs to be compacted because tarantulas generally dislike walking on too fluffy, too soft substrate. And this is why it's avoiding the floor and hanging out on the stick. At the same time, you also need to make sure that you leave some head space, because there needs to be some space for all the excavated substrate. And if you fix that, your tarantula will be happier and be complaining less about their landlord. So that's everything for today, and thanks for checking in. If you like this kind of video, make sure to like, subscribe and leave a question in the comments so that I can answer it in the next episode of Tarantula Bites. See ya!